My name is George Whitman. I'm 70 years old, though some days I feel twice that, and other days I swear I could outpace men half my age. I've spent my whole life working, first as a construction foreman, then as a small hardware store owner. I raised a son, Robert, with my late wife, June, and poured everything I had into giving him a good life. Now, with June gone and the store sold, my days are quiet. Too quiet, if I'm being honest. I fill the hours with walks, books, and the occasional fishing trip. But sometimes, when I catch myself staring out the window for too long, I wonder the world has already moved on without me. Robert married Melissa 10 years ago, and while she's polite on the surface, I've always sensed her sharp tongue lurking just beneath. She's younger than Robert by a good 10 years, ambitious, always planning the next vacation, the next purchase, the next big thing. To her, life is about moving forward, and in her eyes, I'm just a relic slowing them down. It happened on a Sunday afternoon at their house. We'd gathered for a small family lunch, just Robert, Melissa, and me. The grandkids were at a friend's birthday party, so it was quiet. Melissa had been showing Robert pictures on her tablet. Mountains, rivers, faraway cities. Wouldn't it be amazing to take a trip like this? She asked, her voice bubbling with excitement. A real adventure, maybe hiking in the Rockies or even Everest Base Camp. Something that makes you feel alive. Robert chuckled. You know my knees wouldn't survive that. Melissa laughed and then, almost absent-mindedly, she turned toward me. Her smile didn't soften. It sharpened. And you, George? You're too old for adventure. You'd never make it past the parking lot. The word stung more than I expected. Too old. I forced a polite smile, hiding the fire that sparked inside. Maybe, I said quietly, though my chest ached with the insult. She carried on, not noticing or not caring that she had wounded me. Adventure is for the young, for people with energy, drive. Once you hit a certain age, it's about slowing down, enjoying the simple things. You know, knitting, gardening, bingo. Her laughter filled the room. Robert chuckled awkwardly, but said nothing to defend me. I nodded, but my mind was already spinning. Too old for adventure. Was that what they all thought? That I should sit quietly in my chair, waiting for the clock to run out? That my time for proving myself, for living, had ended? That night, back in my quiet house, I couldn't shake her words. I stared at June's photo on the mantel, her smile frozen in time. Too old, I whispered. Is that what I've become? I thought about the years I had worked, the nights I had stayed late at the store, the sacrifices I had made so Robert could go to college. And now, at 70, my reward was to be told I was finished, that my spirit was as tired as my bones. But here's the truth. I wasn't finished. I wasn't done. Melissa's words had lit something in me, something that had been sleeping for years, a spark of defiance, of pride. And so, in the quiet of that night, I made a decision. If they thought I was too old for adventure, then I would prove them wrong in the loudest, boldest way possible. I would do something that not even Robert or Melissa could deny. Something that would make them see me not as a burden, but as a man who still had fire in his veins. I didn't know yet how I'd do it, but the seed was planted, and the mountain was already calling. The week after Melissa called me too old for adventure, her words stayed with me like a splinter under the skin. Every time I sat down in my recliner or reached for my cane, I heard her laughter again, sharp and dismissive. It didn't just sting, it burned. So I started researching. Late at night, when the house was silent except for the creak of the old clock, I pulled out my laptop and searched for articles about Everest. Not the stories of world-class climbers with teams of Sherpas and corporate sponsors, but stories of ordinary people. Men and women who weren't much younger than me, but who had found a way to stand at the top of the world. One name stuck out. A 72-year-old Japanese man who had reached the summit. Another, a woman in her late 60s who had made it to base camp. If they could do it, why couldn't I? I spent hours watching videos, studying gear lists, reading training regimens. The climb was dangerous, yes, but it wasn't impossible. And the more I read, the more the spark inside me grew into determination. Of course, I couldn't tell anyone. If I mentioned Everest, Melissa would laugh me out of the room. Robert would frown, Tell me to be realistic, to stay safe. Even my friends at the community center would probably pat me on the shoulder and suggest a fishing trip instead. No, this was something I had to keep close, at least for now. Still, Melissa gave me plenty of fuel to keep going. The next Sunday, at family dinner, she noticed me stretching my legs by the window before we sat down. "What's this, George?" she asked, smirking. "Training for a marathon?" I smiled faintly. "Just keeping limber." She laughed. "You should save your energy for bingo night. Adventure is for the young, remember?" The table chuckled politely, but I stayed quiet. Inside, though, I thought, you'll see, Melissa. One day soon, you'll choke on those words. Over the next few weeks, I began small. Early morning walks turned into brisk hikes on the trails outside town. The cane that I leaned on for comfort stayed at home more often than not. My lungs ached, my legs protested, but each day I pushed a little further. At the sporting goods store, I bought a sturdy pair of hiking boots. The clerk, a young man with tattoos down his arms, raised an eyebrow when I asked about altitude training masks. "Planning something big?" he asked. "Something like that," I said with a grin. Each night, I logged my progress. 1 mile without stopping. Then 2. Then climbing the old quarry hill, slow but steady. My body complained, but my spirit soared. For the first time in years, I felt alive again. Melissa, of course, noticed none of this. At dinner one evening, she went on about a coworker who was planning a trip to Europe. "That's adventure," she said pointedly. "Not long walks in the park." She glanced at me with that same condescending smile. I simply nodded, biting back the smile tugging at my lips. If only she knew, because by then I wasn't just dreaming. I had already contacted a trekking company that organized guided expeditions to Everest Base Camp. I had spoken to a representative who assured me they'd worked with climbers in their 70s before. They'd help with permits, gear, training schedules, everything. It was real. It was happening. That night, I sat with June's photo again. "I wish you could see this, love," I whispered. "They think I'm finished. They think I'm too old for adventure. But I'll show them. I'll show them all." And for the first time in years, I felt not just alive, but unstoppable. By the 3rd week of my training, the decision was made. No more late-night what-ifs. No more wondering if Melissa's cruel words had just gotten under my skin. This wasn't just about proving her wrong anymore. It was about proving something to myself, that life didn't end at 70, not unless you let it. So I called the trekking company again. The woman on the other end had a calm, reassuring voice. "Mr. Whitman, are you sure you're ready to commit?" I glanced at June's photo on the mantel and smiled. "Yes, book me for the spring expedition, Everest Base Camp." As soon as I hung up, I felt it, a rush of adrenaline, as if I'd already climbed halfway up the mountain. The papers came through by email within hours. The permit process, the gear checklist, the itinerary. I printed them out and spread them across my desk like battle plans. From that moment, there was no turning back. My training grew tougher. I added weighted packs to my hikes, slowly increasing the load. My legs burned, my lungs ached, but with each step, I imagined the icy air of Nepal filling my chest. I climbed the quarry hill twice in a row, then 3 times. By the end of each climb, sweat drenched my shirt, but my spirit only grew stronger. Of course, Melissa kept supplying me with fuel. One Sunday, she noticed my boots by the door as I came in. "New shoes, George," she asked, her tone teasing. "Just breaking them in," I said casually. She laughed. "Breaking them in for what, exactly? A stroll around the mall?" Robert chuckled half-heartedly, but his eyes lingered on me longer than usual, as if he sensed something. I only smiled. Something like that. Later that evening, as we cleared the dishes, Melissa struck again. "You know, George, you should be careful. Men your age break hips just getting out of bed. Forget adventures. You should be focusing on staying in one piece." Her laughter rang in my ears, cruel and careless. I wanted to tell her right then, and there what I was planning, to watch the shock wipe that smirk off her face. But no, not yet. The reveal would come later, when the mountain itself bore witness. At home, I threw myself deeper into preparation. I joined a local gym, my first in decades, and hired a trainer half my age who raised an eyebrow when I told him my goal. Everest Base Camp? He repeated. That's right. He studied me for a long moment before finally nodding. All right, Mr. Whitman. If you're serious, I'll get you ready. And ready he got me. Squats, lunges, stair climbs with a heavy backpack. My legs screamed, my back ached, but every morning I rose determined to push harder. Melissa's voice echoed in my head, too old for adventure, and each time I lifted a weight or climbed another step, I answered her with grit. The changes didn't go unnoticed. At dinner one evening, Emily, my granddaughter, leaned closer and whispered, "Grandpa, you look stronger. Are you working out?" I winked, something like that, "Sweetheart." Her innocent smile gave me strength. Meanwhile, Melissa kept up her jabs. "George, maybe you should just stick to gardening. It's safer," she said one evening as I stretched my legs before dinner. I smiled, holding her gaze. "You'd be surprised what I'm capable of." She rolled her eyes, muttering, "Don't hurt yourself." But inside, I was smiling wider than she could imagine, because the truth was, I had already committed. The tickets were booked, the trek was scheduled, and every step I took now was one step closer to the Himalayas. Melissa thought she had crushed me with her words. What she didn't know was that she had given me exactly what I needed, fuel, and soon enough, she'd see just how far that fuel had carried me. By the 4th week of training, my body was changing. My arms were firmer, my legs steadier. I could climb the quarry hill with a loaded backpack and not feel like I was going to collapse at the top. For the first time in years, I felt alive, not like an old man marking time, but like someone preparing for something great. Still, the plan was too big to keep locked up entirely. I needed someone to know, someone I could trust, and that someone was Emily. She was 16, the quiet one of Robert and Melissa's children, always with her nose in a book or sketching in her notebook at the dinner table. Unlike her brother, Ryan, who seemed to mimic his mother's arrogance, Emily had Margaret's kindness in her eyes. She never once laughed at me when Melissa did. Instead, she'd slip me an extra biscuit or ask about my garden. One Saturday afternoon, I invited her to the park. She arrived with her backpack, surprised but curious. "What's up, Grandpa?" she asked, falling into step beside me as we started down the trail. I looked at her, measuring the moment, then decided to trust her. "Emily," I said, "I'm planning something big." Her brow furrowed. "Big?" "Yes," I said, "bigger than anything I've done before. I'm going to climb to Everest Base Camp." Her eyes widened, and for a moment I braced for laughter, for disbelief. But instead, her lips curled into the widest smile I'd seen in years. "Are you serious? That's amazing." Relief washed through me. "You think so?" "Of course," she said. "Most people just sit around at 70. You're going to Everest. That's epic." I chuckled. "Your mother thinks I'm too old for adventure. She laughs every chance she gets." Emily's smile faded. "Don't listen to her. She underestimates everyone who doesn't fit her idea of perfect. But I know you, Grandpa. If you say you're doing this, you'll do it." Her faith steadied me. "Thank you, Emily. You're the first person I've told. But you must keep it secret, at least for now. I want to reveal it when the time is right." She nodded eagerly. "I promise. And when you do, it'll be the best surprise ever." With Emily on my side, the weight of secrecy felt lighter. I wasn't alone anymore. Meanwhile, Melissa's words only grew sharper. At Sunday dinner, I reached for a second helping of roast. Melissa laughed. "Careful, George. Don't overdo it. Men your age need to watch their diet, or you'll keel over before dessert." Ryan laughed along, his mother's echo. I smiled calmly, though my chest tightened. "Don't worry about me, Melissa. I've got more stamina than you think." She smirked. "Sure, if adventure means watching TV from the recliner." Even Robert chuckled, though uneasily, clearly unwilling to cross his wife. I said nothing more, but across the table, Emily caught my eye. She gave me the smallest of nods, as if to say, Don't let them get to you. That night, I pushed harder in training. Lunges, squats, stair climbs with weights strapped to my back. Every insult Melissa threw became another rep, another step. Each time she said too old, I answered with sweat and grit. By now, my trek organizer had sent me a full gear list: insulated jackets, thermal layers, trekking poles. Packages began arriving at my door, and I carefully stored them in the spare room. When Melissa teased me again about all those silly deliveries, I simply smiled. If only she knew. Because soon, I wouldn't just be George Whitman, the old man she mocked at Sunday dinners. I would be George Whitman, the 70-year-old who stood in the shadow of Everest. And when that day came, Melissa would realize she hadn't broken me. She had made me unstoppable. The packages piled higher in my spare room. Boots, thermal jackets, gloves thick enough to stand against the Himalayan winds. Each delivery was a brick in the foundation of my plan. Each time I unwrapped a new piece of gear, I felt a thrill course through me. This wasn't a dream anymore. This was real. Every morning began with training. Hikes with a weighted pack, push-ups until my arms trembled, stair climbs at the local gym. My trainer, a young man named Kyle, grinned one afternoon after I'd finished 3 sets without stopping. "You're tougher than guys half your age, Mr. Whitman. If anyone can do this, you can." That compliment carried me through the week. At Sunday dinner, however, Melissa's barbs only sharpened. She eyed my thinner frame, the muscle slowly carving its way back into my arms. "You've been working out, George? What's the point? Men your age are one slip away from a broken hip. You should be careful not to get any wild ideas." Ryan snickered. Robert sighed but stayed silent. I set my fork down slowly, smiling in that calm way I perfected. "Don't worry about me, Melissa. I'm taking care of myself." She chuckled. "Taking care of yourself? Please, you'd be lucky to manage a walk around the block without keeling over." I said nothing more, but across the table, Emily's eyes burned with quiet fury. She reached under the table and gave my hand a quick squeeze, as if to say, "Don't let her win." Later that evening, Emily found me by the porch swing. "Grandpa," she whispered, "don't listen to her. You're stronger than she'll ever admit." Her words steadied me. "Thank you, Emily. Sometimes I think you're the only one who sees me." "I do," she said firmly. "And when you're on that mountain, I'll be thinking of you every step." I smiled. "And when I come back, we'll share the story together." In the weeks that followed, my preparations reached their peak. The Trek company sent my finalized itinerary. I booked my flights. Vaccinations, permits, insurance. Everything was checked off the list. One evening, I stood in the spare room surrounded by gear. Layers of clothing stacked neatly, ropes coiled, boots broken in. For a long moment, I just stood there, drinking it in. At 70, I was about to do something most men never dared in their youth. And Melissa? She still thought I was nothing more than an old man wasting away. The final Sunday dinner before my departure nearly broke my resolve. Melissa had invited her sister's family over, and the table was loud with chatter. At one point, Melissa raised her glass. "Here's to adventure," she said dramatically. "The kind for people who still can have it, not for those of us who are, well, past our prime." Her eyes flicked to me, and laughter rippled through the table. Robert shifted uncomfortably, muttering, "Melissa?" But she ignored him. I simply smiled, sipping my water. "Adventure has many forms, Melissa. You might be surprised what old men are capable of." The laughter grew, but this time I didn't feel the sting. I felt the fire, because while she mocked, while she dismissed, I was already packed. My passport was ready, my flight confirmed. In a few short days, I would be on my way to Nepal. That night, Emily slipped me a folded piece of paper. "Don't open it until you're on the plane," she whispered. I hugged her tightly, grateful beyond words. As I walked home, cane tapping against the pavement, I whispered to June's photo in my mind, "It's time, love. Time to show them all." And for the first time in years, I didn't just feel alive. I felt unstoppable. The morning of my departure came with a chill in the air, as though the world itself knew I was stepping into something greater. My bags were packed, gear secured, passport in my pocket. At 70 years old, I stood at my front door, staring at the path ahead. Emily was there to see me off. She hugged me tightly, whispering, "Show them, Grandpa. Show them what you're made of." I smiled, my throat tight. "I will, sweetheart. And when I come back, we'll celebrate together." The drive to the airport felt surreal. The hum of the car, the sight of people rushing with their luggage. It all reminded me how small my world had become these past years, confined to my house, the grocery store, and Sunday dinners. Now I was stepping beyond it. On the plane, I opened the folded note Emily had given me. Inside, in her neat handwriting, were 4 words: "Climb for Grandma, too." Tears blurred my eyes. June would have loved this. She had always been the adventurous one, dragging me on road trips, coaxing me up hiking trails, insisting that age was no excuse for missing out on life. Melissa might call me too old, but June, she would have been cheering the loudest. When I landed in Kathmandu, the noise and colors overwhelmed me. Bustling streets, prayer flags fluttering, the smell of spices in the air. The trekking company's representative met me with a smile. "Mr. Whitman, welcome to Nepal." The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Gear checks, orientation meetings, and introductions to the rest of the group. There were younger climbers, men and women in their 30s and 40s, but also a couple closer to my age. One man, 68, grinned at me as we strapped on packs. "70, huh? You're braver than most." Or more stubborn, I replied with a laugh. We began the trek from Lukla, and the reality of the climb hit me immediately. The air was thin, each step a reminder that I wasn't 20 anymore. But I pushed on, one foot after another, the mountains rising around us like silent giants. At night, I lay in my tent, my muscles aching, but my heart full. I was doing it. Meanwhile, back home, Melissa scoffed when Robert mentioned my trip. "Everest? Please," she said, sipping her wine. "He probably signed up for one of those little tourist hikes. They'll let him walk a few miles, snap a photo, and then call an adventure." Ryan laughed. "Yeah, Grandpa couldn't make it up a flight of stairs without wheezing. No way he's doing Everest." Robert said nothing, though guilt gnawed at him. He knew I was tougher than they admitted, but years of Melissa's sneers had worn down his defenses. Emily, however, defended me. "You'll see," she said firmly. "Grandpa's stronger than you think." Melissa rolled her eyes. "Sweetheart, I don't want you to be disappointed when he comes back empty-handed. Better to face reality now. He's not cut out for this." But as she dismissed me at her dining table, I was hundreds of miles away, climbing stone steps carved into Himalayan hillsides, my breath steady, my resolve unshaken. Every step forward was a strike against her words. Every lungful of cold mountain air was proof that I wasn't done, that 70 was not too old for adventure. At night, under the stars, I whispered to June, "I'm here, love. I'm really doing it." Melissa thought she had buried me under the weight of her ridicule. But what she didn't know was that the mountain was lifting me higher than I'd ever been before. By the second week of trekking, the real test began. The air grew thinner, every breath a reminder that I was far from home. My legs ached constantly, my chest burned, and some mornings I woke wondering if Melissa had been right, that maybe I was too old for this. But then I'd remember Emily's note, "Climb for Grandma, too." So I pushed on. We crossed long suspension bridges that swayed above roaring rivers, prayer flags whipping in the wind. We passed through villages where children waved, shouting cheerful greetings, their voices carrying hope. At night, the group gathered around simple meals of rice and lentils, while the cold seeped into our bones. One evening, as I rubbed the stiffness from my knees, the 68-year-old trekker grinned at me. "Still going strong, Whitman. You've got grit." I chuckled, though every muscle screamed. I've been underestimated my whole life. Not this time. The hardest stretch came as we climbed toward Low Bush. The altitude made each step feel like a mountain of its own. My breath came shallow, my body heavy. Some of the younger trekkers slowed, groaning, while others doubted they could continue. I wanted to stop. God, I wanted to stop. But Melissa's voice echoed in my head. Too old for adventure. You'd never make it past the parking lot. And suddenly, stopping was an option. I dug in my poles, planted one foot, then another. I counted my breaths, 1, 2, 3, and somehow I kept moving. When we finally reached the lodge at Low Bush, I collapsed onto a bench, sweat soaking through my shirt, but my heart soared. I was still in the fight. Meanwhile, back home, Melissa had turned my journey into a joke. At another family dinner, she laughed as she poured wine. George is probably at some little rest stop, sipping tea, calling it climbing Everest. Honestly, I don't know why he wastes his time. He should have just stayed here where he belongs. Ryan smirked. Yeah, he's probably sitting in a lodge bragging to tourists while the guides do all the work. Robert shifted uneasily. He wanted to defend me. I could see in the way his eyes darted, but he stayed silent, caught in Melissa's shadow. Emily, though, slammed her fork down. You don't know him at all. Grandpa's tougher than anyone at this table. He's out there doing something none of you would dare to try. Melissa rolled her eyes. Sweetheart, don't be naive. Adventure isn't for old men. He'll come home tired and empty-handed. But even as she dismissed me, I was climbing higher, pushing further than she could imagine. When we finally reached Gorak Shep, the last stop before base camp, the sight of Everest towering in the distance brought tears to my eyes. White peaks carved against the endless blue sky. The air so sharp and pure it felt like a new world. The trek to base camp itself was grueling. The rocky terrain tested every muscle. My legs felt like lead, my lungs burned, but I kept whispering to myself, too old for adventure. Prove her wrong. And then, at last, we were there. A scattering of colorful tents dotted the glacier. Climbers prepared for the summit. Prayer flags flapped in the icy wind, and the great mountain loomed above, silent and eternal. I planted my boots firmly in the snow and let out a laugh that echoed in the thin air. At 70 years old, I had reached Everest Base Camp. Melissa thought I'd never make it past the parking lot. But here I was, standing in the shadow of the tallest mountain on earth. And when I returned, she would know the truth. I was not too old for adventure. I was living proof that it was never too late. The flight home felt different. My body was sore, my knees stiff, and my lungs still adjusting from the altitude. But my spirit had never been lighter. I had done it. At 70 years old, I had stood at Everest Base Camp, staring up at the highest peak in the world. I had walked where most people only dreamed to walk. As I stepped to my front door, the house seemed warmer, fuller. June's photo on the mantel caught the afternoon light, her smile glowing as if she already knew what I had done. I touched the frame softly. We did it, love. We proved them wrong. But the real moment awaited me. Sunday dinner. I arrived at Robert and Melissa's house that evening, my backpack still scuffed from the mountain trails. Melissa opened the door, her eyes darting immediately to the bag. You're back, she said, her tone sharp but curious. How was your little trip? I smiled. It was everything I hoped for. At the table, chatter filled the room. The kids bombarded me with questions. Grandpa, did you see yaks? Did you touch snow? Was it scary? Their excitement warmed me. Emily sat quietly at first, her eyes shining with pride. She already knew, of course, but she was waiting for me to reveal it. Melissa, however, sipped her wine with that familiar smirk. So, George, tell us, did you make it past the parking lot? Ryan chuckled, muttering, Betty didn't. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. Slowly, deliberately, I slid out the photographs. The first showed me standing at Lukla, pack on my back. The next, crossing suspension bridge high above the river. Then the one that made the children gasp. A shot of me at Everest Base Camp, the great mountain looming behind me, colorful tent at my feet. Silence fell over the table. Emily broke it with a triumphant grin. I told you, Grandpa really did it. Ryan's smirk vanished, his eyes wide. Wait, you actually... Yes, I interrupted firmly. I stood at Everest Base Camp. I climbed the trails, carried the packs, felt the air burn my lungs. At 70 years old, I stood in the shadow of the tallest mountain on earth. Melissa's face flushed red, her wine glass trembling slightly. That's impossible. People your age don't. People my age, I said evenly, are only limited by what others tell them they can't do. You call me too old for adventure. You laughed at me week after week. But while you mocked, I was training. While you doubted, I was climbing. And while you thought I'd fade quietly into background, I was proving you wrong at 17,000 feet above sea level. The children cheered, Emily clapping her hands. Even Robert, who had been silent too long, finally spoke. Dad, I'm proud of you. I should have said it sooner, but I am. Melissa tried to regain her composure, forcing a laugh. Well, I suppose it's nice you had your little vacation. It wasn't a vacation, I said sharply. It was a reminder to all of you, but especially to me, that life isn't over just because of age. I am not too old. I am not finished. And I will never again let anyone make me feel like I am. The table fell quiet. Melissa looked down at her plate, her power over the conversation broken. Later that evening, as I left, Emily hugged me tightly. You did it, Grandpa. You really showed them. I kissed the top of her head. No, sweetheart. We did it. For me. For you. For Grandma. Walking home beneath the stars, my cane tapping lightly on the sidewalk, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. Melissa could stew in her silence. Ryan could sit with his shame. But the truth was mine to keep. I had climbed my mountain, and no one could ever tell me I was too old for adventure again.